Welcome to the Short Funk Podcast. I'm Tom Barbalet. I talked a little bit about wandering around an open-air mall. What would you call it? I still don't have a name for the space. But in doing this, I walked behind what I think was a Best Buy, and there were two guys obviously doing a drug deal. I think it was probably weed from what I saw. And I reflect on the fact California cannabis for medical uses is fully legal. And they do this through kind of an annual fee that people pay in order to get a medical card. But more importantly, a letter. The card is not really useful anywhere. It's just, I don't know, something for people to have. But the letter from a physician indicates that you medically can use cannabis, and that typically costs between, well, I've seen as low as $50, but typically between $80 to $120. And looking at these two dudes doing their weed deal, I thought to myself, what is stopping them from using the legal infrastructure so they could actually purchase this legally? And what are the deltas in costs? Because obviously they're still doing it through the illegal method because it appears to cost too much. The best way, from what I understand, for folks to do this is for small groups of legal cannabis patients to get together in collectives and basically to grow and share their own cannabis within their collectives. And this is actually legal. So what happens is, I guess, 12 or so folk get together. The paperwork allows for, 12 infantile plants and 6 full-size plants. Well, you can't mix and match. It either has to be one or the other. And for each letter, they're entitled to that. And if you get a group of 12 people together, then you have 72 full-size plants or, 144 infantile plants. And actually in this area, and I know through participating in the local community action group, there are a number of folks that grow these kind of gardens with, I think the maximum is 99 plants to avoid federal prosecution, so there are some restrictions associated with the sheer volume, but they all have their paperwork and they all are kind of groups that have gotten together with their friends, and all this kind of stuff, from my perspective at least, as a non-authoritarian person, seems remarkably smart. So why would someone still meet in the back of an alleyway and do an old illegal weed deal? What gets that going? And if you look at the commercial medical market here in California, there's still a substantial margins attached to it. None of the jurisdictions are actually making cannabis like rosemary or basil. They all want to maintain the prices of illegality so they can add their taxable revenue in on that. Now, the description of the collective that I gave, kind of medical collective where it's not an exchange, well, there probably could be an exchange of money in there. In fact, I think that's allowed. But it isn't like tax revenue is going to the government. The medical groups, however, that create the medical cannabis establishment here does pay tax, does pay a reasonable amount of tax. But it's nothing like Washington State. Washington State, I think, enacted 33% on recreational, because obviously they have recreational and medical. I think the medical is less. I think it's just the state tax. But in those circumstances, Washington State isn't even interested in removing the illegal market. They're interested in cutting into it and gaining revenue through that. So there are all these curious things. And I think if you weren't part of a collective here and, you had the paperwork, you'd still be paying very close to, if not identical to, illegal market rates plus tax. So the whole thing is kind of not intended towards removing illegality, making stuff cheaper, and, minimizing the whole government hand in it. It's all designed to kind of maximize government taxation, maximize, in California at least, large, bodies that come together and pay the state thousands of dollars on an annual basis plus tax. And the whole thing has just become really very, very curious. So the illegal market is still maintained through this. From what I can establish on YouTube and through surveying, various things that I read online about this is very much the intentions of the states. The intentions of the states is to find another substantial revenue source. It's not associated with removing any of the punitive penalties aside from imprisonment. It's really just about a money-making venture. And I guess I can understand how the illegal market still persists in this environment. because obviously there are groups that don't want to pay like full market rates for these things. And they're not in any way being impacted by these changing laws and this kind of stuff, because still the federal government makes it illegal, and still the federal government occasionally cherry-pick raids certain dispensaries and what have you. But I think probably in the next 2 or 3 election cycles, we'll see a majority of the states in the US move at least to medical, and that will move past a bar associated with the federal restrictions. Will it ever be fully legal? Well, I guess my perspective is ideally all the components in this thing would just become cheaper to the point where the illegal market completely erodes. An interesting point, I've been seeing various TED Talks associated with the cost of even like slightly illegality, like the amount of electricity that is used in these indoor grows, these kind of things, which just completely goes against, I think, a lot of the mentality that I would hope to see in this kind of alternative, newly legalized culture where, the sun is utilized more than anything. Curiously enough, greenhouses up until very recently have been restricted by the city of San Jose, associated with these kind of cannabis collectives, although the city has struck that down in the past few weeks. What's curious is my neighbours here that have large plots next to them, like residential homes, but basically growing, 99 plants, are absolutely categorically dead against the movement towards legalization. And when I talk to them, it's associated with the quality of life that they have living next to these large plots. Because obviously there are guard dogs and there are various other things which are part of the legacy stigma of illegality, which makes these environments just unpleasant for those that live around them. I find this stuff very curious. It's nice to see, slowly but surely, these things being eroded and perhaps discussed more frankly or more honestly in a fashion that they haven't been discussed historically. Anyway, I will continue, I guess, to walk around malls, outdoor malls, and occasionally find these things where I reflect, this is an absolutely fascinating topic for Short Funk. Tom Barbalet in San Jose, signing out.